Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Jake Sick with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of JakeSick.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. Before we get started with our conversation today, if you're listening to this conversation on audio, please give us a 5-star rating and also subscribe. And if you're watching us on YouTube right now, please like the video with a thumbs up and please subscribe to my channel. I'm very honored and privileged to welcome this incredible person on my right. He is a singer-songwriter who spent 17 years as a sound engineer for 10 Downing Street in the UK. He's also the co-founder of the London internet radio station Soho Radio. So please help me welcome Finlay Morton to the podcast.
Yeah, hello.
Finlay, thank you so much. How's everything in London?
Yeah, it's all good. It's been lovely weather the last few days, and yeah, things are kind of getting back to normal after all the COVID stuff. So hopefully that will stay away.
Awesome. I actually studied abroad in London 12 years ago. One of the best highlights of my life.
Oh, cool. Yeah. It's a really nice city to live in. It's lots of things going on.
Absolutely. So, Finlay, when did you get interested in music, and how did that passion evolve into desire to pursue a career in a recording industry?
It just kind of happens, you know. I mean, I was always into music from a very young age. I learned to play guitar on one of my older brother's guitars when I was about 10 or 11, I guess. Started doing that. And my oldest brother used to run a record store, so he would always be, pointing me in the right direction of things, and thrusting a Tom Petty album into my hand and say, "Go and listen to this," or Little Feat, or stuff like that. So I was kind of raised on the great American songwriters.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So, what I enjoy hearing and I'm learning about, I'm excited to talk to you about, was you spent 17 years as a sound engineer for 10 Downing Street. So, how did you get the position?
Okay, well, if you're a musician and you kind of play in bands a lot, you get familiar with sound equipment. And a friend of mine used to run the department. It was actually a government kind of department, rather like White House Communications is in Washington. So it's like it was a government department that was they used to do all the press conferences and things like that. So I went along basically as a kind of freelance technician, and ended up staying an awful long time. So yeah, so I think I've done 5 prime ministers.
Wow,
and about four presidents, I think.
That's amazing. That's amazing. One of those prime ministers that you saw was actually one of the final times that former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher and it was her last day at 10 Downing Street. So, what could you remember about that day?
Yeah, well, it was pretty strange because she didn't want to go, and she was very tearful about the whole thing. So it was quite emotional for them, and she had said goodbye to all the staff in the sort of number 10 building, and she had been quite popular with the people that worked there. So she kind of came out and said her goodbyes, and got in the car and left, and was clearly very upset. And John Major sort of arrived about 20 minutes later and said, "Hello, I'm the new Prime Minister." So off you go again, kind of thing. Yeah.
Awesome. That's incredible that you went from one prime minister to another in a span of 20 minutes.
Yeah. So the system we have here is basically, as soon as the result of an election is announced, then I mean, it wasn't for the major Thatcher takeover, but if there's going to be a change of government, as soon as the election result is announced, then the people who have won move straight in. Like you have like a couple of months, don't you, from November to January? Yeah, we don't have that. They just move straight in.
Oh wow! So one of the prime ministers you worked with was Tony Blair, and you were actually his sound roadie.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I used to travel with them when they went, anywhere, and it was my job to make sure all the sound equipment was working, that all the press guys were getting the correct levels, that everything was recorded properly, because we would make an official recording and then produce an official transcript, and that there was always a race between us and the White House to who could do it quickest, which was quite fun. But yeah, so the Blair, I was there when he first met George W. That was in that would have been in Camp David, I think. So we went to Camp David the first time they met, and yeah, that was quite an interesting meeting. It was very. I don't know if people know this, but Camp David is a Marine base, so they talk about coming on board to because it's like a ship. And you know that movie, the one about the Marines. There's a few young men or a few angry
good men.
That's the one, yeah. So it really was like people screaming at each other, and all this kind of what kind of bus is this? It's a Marine bus, so it's the best bus, sir. And they would they would all shout, and of course, all us sort of British journalists were kind of looking around in bewilderment because we'd only ever seen that in the movies. But yeah, it was quite interesting.
So speaking of interesting, you also met Boris Yeltsin, I believe. You're feet away when Prime Minister Blair met Boris Yeltsin.
Yeah, so that was there's an organization called the G7, which is the group of 7 most financially developed countries, and when Yeltsin became president there, they were trying to get him on side, so they made it the G8 and invited Russia to join. So I was there when they presented him with the G8 logo, which was it was a big deal for Russia, because they had basically that was the first time they'd been invited in from the cold, so to speak. But poor old Boris was he was pretty drunk most of the time. So it was clear that he wasn't going to last. But yeah, so I've been to the White House, I've been to the Kremlin. So yeah, interesting places. The Kremlin's not nearly as nice as it looks. It's most of it's falling apart.
Boy. So one final prime minister that you were a part of, it was Prime Minister Gordon Brown.
Yeah.
And I believe there was a story about one of the advice that you gave him involved a microphone.
Oh, right. Yeah. So, but when he first became Prime Minister, he wanted to do this thing because they have to go and get permission from the Queen to form a government. And he wanted to do this thing where he came back from that visit, got out of his car, and immediately started to talk to the press people. So we had to rig him up with a sort of radio lapel mic. So I had to meet him after he'd met the Queen, but before he got to Downing Street, and I fitted him up with his mic, and I said, listen, Prime Minister, you need to be aware that you are now broadcasting, because basically the mic was on. And I said, anything that you say in this car could be potentially picked up by anyone that's got the right receiving equipment. And he kind of looked at me like I was a bit mad. But curiously, a couple of years later, that was the thing that lost him the election, because he put on a news reporter's microphone and forgot he had it on, and he got back into the car and started berating some poor member of the public who had just tried to talk to him, and he was really very rude about it, and it basically lost him the election. So always listen to your sound tech would be my advice.
Alrighty, I will make sure to do that, and I think that those are incredible stories. So let's get back into the music world, shall we? So what have been some of the challenges that you faced breaking into the music industry, And how did you overcome those obstacles?
Well, it's really very difficult. With the advent of Spotify and streaming services, it's effectively impossible for any new musicians, even old musicians, to earn a living anymore, because people have gotten used to getting everything for nothing, which is kind of, it makes it very difficult for new acts that are breaking through. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm not in the position where I have to rely on music for my main income. But if I did, I think I would probably be on the streets. So I do, I do feel sorry for people who are entering the business now. I was just slightly too late to because I basically missed all of the period where people bought things, where people bought albums and bought CDs and bought tapes, and so I missed all that and kind of got going properly once it was impossible to earn any money. So yeah, I mean, even the major artists. I mean, this is why you're seeing all the major artists now selling their songs to publishing companies, because they basically don't have any more income. So they're grabbing, $100 million or whatever for their back catalogue, because they're probably never going to earn anything more out of it ever. So which is pretty sad, and it means that there are going to be less and less new artists coming through, and the result of that is that we'll still be listening to, Fleetwood Mac albums in 20 years' time. Nothing against Fleetwood Mac, but it would be nice to hear something new.
Absolutely. And I love Fleetwood Mac to death. I love them. I've seen them live 3 times when I came to Kansas City.
Yeah.
Great show. But at the same time, I love discovering new artists as well. So anyway, one area that you might have to discover new artists is Soho Radio, that airs in both London and New York City. So you helped co-launch it. So how has Soho Radio stand out against other radio stations?
Well, what we do is we've tried to make it kind of go back in time a bit to the time when there were no playlists and no gatekeepers. I mean, I don't know if your audience knows this, but most radio stations have basically a list of records that they just play over and over and over and over again. And if you listen, to that station for a week, you'll probably hear the same 80 songs just played over and over again, because they're what's called a playlist, and it's very difficult to get in for a new artist. And the other thing that people don't realize is that there are actually only 2 record labels left in the world. So there are 2 companies that own all of the record labels, apart from some decent independents like Rough Trade. So even getting a record deal is no guarantee that you're going to break through, because there are really only 2 big companies that run everything, and they will frequently sign up somebody to stop them releasing something, which is absolutely appalling. Sorry, back to Soho Radio. So we're trying to get back to the days where the presenter, we don't have any playlists, we don't have any advertising. We have kind of brand partnerships, so people may sponsor a show or sponsor sponsor an event. We do stuff called vinyl sessions, where we have a band in and they record a track live straight to vinyl. We've got a vinyl cutting machine in the studio, so they can record something straight to vinyl, and then we'll play it back, on the radio. So that's quite cool. But we just let the presenters play whatever they like, and what that does is that it means that every time you listen to any of the programs, you'll hear something different. You'll hear something new. You'll hear something that you haven't heard before, and alongside classics. And but it's up to the people who are actually presenting the stuff to decide what they want to play. We don't tell them any of that.
I think that's incredible because the thing is, they can give you like a list of not just like, okay, you can have like at least 2 to 5 classics, but the rest of are like up and coming artists or artists that are finding their way. I loved hearing that idea.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could. I mean, if somebody came along and as part of the show they said, okay, for the next 2 hours, I'm only going to play unsigned acts, then that would be fine. But I mean, we've got stuff from traditional jazz, we've got reggae shows, we've got house music, we've got dance music, we've got Sunday morning show called The Hangover Cure, which is all nice gentle stuff, which is really cool. But yeah, it's very diverse, and now that the New York City station is starting to kind of come online, we're getting a different flavor from that. So the idea is to have lots of interesting things that people can listen to.
Absolutely, and not to mention, you guys, both London and New York, are the epicenters of when it comes to are two of the big music epicenters of the world.
Yeah. So we're probably going to try and do another one in the furthest time zone from New York, which would probably be Australia, but we can't find anywhere called Soho.
Yeah, definitely. It'd be interesting to see if you guys are able to get to Australia, because that'd be wonderful, like to hear it in Brisbane or in Sydney.
Yeah, well, you get the station is worldwide. It's an internet only station, so people can look that up, and we run mainly off of an app, so most people just have it on their phone or on their laptop.
Awesome. So I love your song "Move Mountains." I love listening to it over, and I listen to it over and over again. It's one of my favorite songs of the new year of 2022. So it's incredible. So could you describe the song to my audience?
Yeah, it's a kind of soft rock poppy. I don't know. I mean, I like to think of myself in the vein of Tom Petty. Tom Petty's guitar player, Mike Campbell, once said when he was talking about writing songs, he said that the rule that they stick to is please don't bore us, get to the chorus. So I've always taken that on board, and I like to have a catchy hook in it. But it was written during lockdown, when basically we couldn't go anywhere, and it's basically a song about a guy who's missing his partner and can't travel to see the partners or any of his family, and so it's also slightly tongue in cheek. The chorus lines go, if I could move mountains, I would. That's okay. I'd walk on water if I could. And then I thought about the religious connotations of that. So as a tongue in cheek, the next line is, maybe that would be misunderstood. So I like a bit of humor in songs as well. So, but people can make up their own minds, and lots of different songs mean different things to different people. They don't necessarily mean the same thing to people who are listening that it did to me when I wrote it.
Awesome. So we got to move to social media. So what are some of those ways that people can connect with you on social media, or like how you've been able to use social media to find these incredible artists for Soho Radio?
Yeah. Well, Soho Radio is it's basically on an app, but if you wanted to do it through a browser, it's sohoradiolondon.com. We haven't yet got around to having Soho Radio NewYorkCity.com, but that may well be on the way. But on the app, there are two channels. So New York City's on one, and London's on the other. So that's sohoradiolondon.com or via the app. We've got a presence on Facebook where we post little snippets of videos and things, and Instagram too.
Awesome. So we got to start winding down our conversation. If you had a chance to meet with recording artists or producers who are looking to submit their material to Soho Radio, what advice would you share with them?
It's not for me to give any advice. I've spent I've spent the last 20 years submitting stuff to radio station people who'll tell me that the vocal's too quiet, or the guitar breaks too long, or the intro's too short, or because they seem to think that they know better. Well, they don't. So stick to your guns and submit the thing that you think is right, not what they might tell you.
Awesome, Finlay. All right, Finlay, where can my audience connect with you, and where can they find your music?
Okay, so finlaymorton.com, that's Finlay, morton.com. I'm on Facebook at Finlay Morton, and Instagram and Spotify. There's loads of stuff on YouTube if people want to look that up. I did 3 American radio station tours about 10 years ago, so there's loads of footage from that, just acoustic stuff. And yeah, so finlaymorton.com is the main one.
Awesome, guys. If you missed an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our channels on Apple Podcasts, Deezer, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and Spreaker. Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. Are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Jacob Elyachar, JACOBELYACHAR. Finlay, just to let you know, I am celebrating 11 years of jakes-shake.com and publishing this year.
Amazing. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Finlay. And guys, if you want to read more articles, hear my take on new music, find out what's going on with the latest America's Got Talent episode, head to jakes-shake.com. Once again, jakes-shake.com. Finlay, thank you so much for taking time in your schedule to speak with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Perfect. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.